American men suck.
Let me warn you, your rage does not exist in a vacuum. If we don't get this election right, your wife, your daughter, your mother, we as women will become collateral damage to your rage. To the women listening, we have every right to demand that the men in our lives.
Greg Gutfeld didn't just critique Michelle Obama. He dismantled the carefully crafted facade she's spent years perfecting. With a sly grin and a scalpel-sharp wit, he peeled back the layers of her gleaming public image, revealing a calculated political player beneath the shine. It wasn't your standard media jab, it was a full-scale takedown, part roast, part revelation. Gutfeld blended satire with unsettling accuracy, spotlighting the contrast between her poised, gracious exterior and the behind-the-scenes power moves she rarely acknowledges. The effect? Like watching someone flip on the lights at a masquerade ball. Even her most steadfast admirers found themselves squinting, asking the unthinkable. Had America's icon of elegance been rewriting the narrative all along?
Use our voices to make these choices clear to the men that we love. Our lives are worth more than their anger and disappointment.
What's that pitter-patter sound I'm hearing in the background? It's the footsteps of Barack running to vote for Trump. So, Kat, they know that they're having a hard time with men.
Right.
Doesn't seem like this is the right strategy.
No.
She basically says that
Greg Gutfeld didn't just enter the studio that night. He made an entrance, oozing the kind of swagger that warns, "Buckle up, I'm about to derail someone's PR campaign." The evening's target, Michelle Obama, former First Lady, now media powerhouse, podcast oracle, and reigning monarch of calculated ambiguity, all wrapped in Nike's polished branding. Gutfeld came in hot, wielding sarcasm like a switchblade, pacing like a stand-up comic with receipts. "Let's talk about Michelle," he declared, twirling his pen with the flair of a magician about to pull controversy out of a hat. This wasn't just commentary, it was a performance sharpened to draw blood and laughs in equal measure. If you're enjoying this unapologetic deep dive, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because things just got spicy. Boom! The table was set, and Gutfeld was carving through the narrative like a chef on a mission. He took aim at Michelle Obama's memoir, Becoming, or as he framed it, becoming a billionaire for sharing the woes of mansion life while smiling through the burdens of admiration. Then came the twist, the kind that makes an audience lean in. "Notice the pattern?" he asked, eyebrow raised. "Every interview, a masterclass in strategic victimhood. Michelle, it seems, is always overcoming, always rising, an endless phoenix act that's oddly convenient for someone who's been perched at the top for over a decade." The laughter that followed wasn't just amusement, it was recognition. Gutfeld had tapped into something unspoken, a truth cloaked in humor but edged with undeniable clarity. The kind that doesn't just land, it lingered.
continue to escalate for the Obamas. Hopefully they can settle it like men.
Now, don't get it twisted, Gutfeld said, feigning innocence with the smirk of a cat still batting feathers from its whiskers. Michelle Obama, she's brilliant, she's magnetic. She's achieved more than most could dream of. He leaned in, then delivered the pivot with comedic precision. But let's not act like she clawed her way up from the rubble in boxing gloves. This isn't Rocky. It's Vogue meets Silicon Valley. She's not the underdog, she's the brand. Think corporate speak Yoda, but with a glam squad and a book deal. Cue the highlight reel. Stadium-packed speaking tours, sleek podcast episodes, and themed merch, lunchboxes, water bottles, maybe a tote bag with a quote about resilience. Meanwhile, she's talking about finding balance while perched in a marble kitchen that could double as a boutique hotel lobby. Gutfeld paused, letting the irony breathe. "We're not being empowered," he said. "We're being marketed to." It's not just motivation, it's aspirational consumerism in a glossy Instagram filter. Then came the real punch. She says she doesn't want to run for president. He arched an eyebrow. Maybe she doesn't. But those speeches? They're campaign warm-ups in disguise, just in case America decides it wants hope, change, and a little product placement.
So, but her analysis seems a symptom of a greater problem that contributed to her party's loss. It goes back to seeing the group and not the person. I call it IPB, identity politics blindness. They lost not because Hillary was a woman, they lost because all they saw was a woman. Meanwhile, Trump took nothing for granted. Fact is, many voters would have happily voted for a woman, just not that one. Because unlike Trump, she didn't speak to their concerns. She only spoke of her entitlement. She just assumed that she had the vote. And just assuming a woman must vote for a woman seems pretty insulting from a man. Humans are more complex, surprising, and interesting than liberals.
That line, absolutely lethal. Gutfeld didn't just repeat it. He performed it, mimicking her tone with arms spread wide and a voice dipped in honeyed sincerity. We need to rise above. We need to come together. We need to hope. We need to buy my hardcover for just $29.99, now available at Target. The crowd erupted, sensing the sting beneath the satire. Then, like a comedian who knows his closer is going to hit, Gutfeld shifted gears and went after her go-to move, the martyr card. Michelle's favorite hits always include how hard it was to live in the White House. He said, mock sympathy lacing his tone. She had to be flawless, couldn't mess up, couldn't be too black, couldn't be too loud. You know, just like every first lady who's ever juggled international dinners and Christmas tree themes. He paused, smirking. Except none of the others walked away with a podcast produced by their husband, about themselves. That's not self-reflection, that's writing your own 5-star Yelp review. By now the gloves were off and Gutfeld went for the jugular. She talks about imposter syndrome while being one of the most adored, insulated, and elevated public figures alive. Michelle, if you're the imposter, what hope do the rest of us nobodies have? You're on my cereal box, in my Spotify suggestions, and, no joke, last night, you guest starred in my dream.
Obama has openly admitted that she and Barack sleep in separate bedrooms. Here's how it works. She sleeps downstairs, and he likes men.
Michelle Obama is the algorithm, Gutfeld said flatly, leaning back with the kind of calm that usually precedes a storm. We used to warn that Big Brother was watching. Now, Big Michelle is podcasting. The crowd stirred, unsure whether to laugh or brace themselves, because he wasn't done. Not even close. Then came the final gear shift. Gutfeld revved into the home stretch, eyes locked and tone razor sharp. Michelle's real superpower isn't her charm, it's her untouchability. He gestured with deliberate cool. She's bulletproof. You question her, and suddenly you're branded sexist, racist, or worse. But if she turns self-help slogans into $90 candles and drops a playlist of affirmations on Spotify, that's leadership. The room buzzed, half in disbelief, half in delight. No one was used to hearing someone dissect Michelle Obama's brand with this level of fearless flair. It's curated, it's manufactured. It's politics reimagined as lifestyle branding, he said, pausing to sip his drink. At this point, the only thing more sculpted than her public image is her arms. Laughter hit like a wave, but before it could die down, Gutfeld unleashed the line that sent Twitter into overdrive. She didn't become, folks, she became a franchise.
The latest installment of What Happened in an Election That Occurred a Year and a Half Ago. Michelle Obama was asked how Trump won, and she laid the blame on Hillary. Just kidding, she blamed sexism from women against women.
In light of this last election, I'm concerned about us as women and how we think. If we're not comfortable with the notion that a woman could be our president compared to what? You know, we have to have that conversation with ourselves.
It was self-importance, served with a side of kale. The room cracked up. But just when you thought Gutfeld was coasting on punchlines, he shifted gears. Not too serious, just enough to let the truth peek through the sarcasm. The real danger, he said, his tone tightening, isn't Michelle herself. It's that we keep falling for the illusion. The illusion, glossy speeches, emotionally engineered sound bites, vague promises of empowerment, all designed to stir just enough hope to keep us from noticing that behind the inspiration, the machine keeps humming, untouched. That line didn't just land, it lingered. Because this wasn't just a roast. Gutfeld was peeling back the layers of the political celebrity industrial complex, and Michelle Obama, polished, protected, and platformed, was Exhibit A. He wasn't mocking her success. He was interrogating the packaging. Why do we mistake saturation for sincerity? Why do we celebrate relatability from someone whose version of struggle includes whether to spend her morning prepping for a TED talk or posing for Vogue? And then, with the precision of a sniper, but trading bullets for a brutal one-liner, Gutfeld delivered the final blow. Not with anger, not with venom, but with timing so sharp it sliced through the noise and straight into the silence.
I've been busy working on a new podcast, and so far, it's been a flop. The first 2 episodes have been up all day and only gotten a few thousand views on YouTube. Half of them are probably primetime producers. But still, Michelle's spilling the family secrets, like how Barry gets on her nerves. Listen.
Barack, he had to adjust to what on time was.
Because he was on that island time.
Well, but, I've got this husband who's like, when it's time to leave, it's 3 o'clock, he's getting up and going to the bathroom. And I was like, dude, like 3 o'clock departure means you've done all that, It's like, don't start looking for your glasses,
She's not leading a movement. She's leading a marketing campaign. And guess what? We're the ones swiping the credit card. Gutfeld let the line hang for a moment, the silence cracking just before the audience did. Boom, mic drop. But this wasn't just a comedic takedown, it was a disruption. Gutfeld didn't simply poke holes in Michelle Obama's carefully sculpted public persona. He pried open the entire polished shell that now encases modern political figures moonlighting as lifestyle influencers. Because this wasn't about partisanship, it wasn't left versus right. It was real versus manufactured, and Gutfeld, like him or loathe him, has a sixth sense for spotting the fake. Like a bloodhound with a Red Bull. When he zeroed in on Michelle, it wasn't personal, it was metaphorical. He wasn't pointing at the woman. He was pointing at the fog machine, the flattering lighting, and the endless applause loop. He was asking the one question most talking heads won't touch. What if the most relatable woman in America is just another algorithm-friendly illusion, crafted, filtered, and sold back to us as inspiration? Whether you applauded or bristled, one thing was undeniable. Greg Gutfeld didn't just criticize Michelle Obama, he dragged the myth into the sunlight. And just as the final laughs began to fade, Gutfeld leaned in, like a cinematic villain turning the final page, ready to reveal what comes next.
You about Michelle Obama's ongoing midlife meltdown, like her, as you put it, her Stegosaurus hairdos. The utterance the other day, she says she's transitioning. I mean, I think we both know what she's trying to do by using that word.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you make of all of this? Like, what's going on in that psyche?
I think that transitioning line was meant to get attention because her podcast is failing. No one wants to watch it, and she's not used to that. She's used to being the center of attention. Everyone's interested in me. I don't have to try hard. And so now...
Let's talk about the kids, Gutfeld said, flashing a grin. Because every good franchise needs a sequel. And just like Marvel's Phase 4, Michelle's got it queued up. Youth initiatives, college outreach, foundation funding, it's all there. Polished, branded, teased like the next blockbuster. But here's the twist. When's the last time we saw real, measurable results from any of it? We don't get outcomes. We get merch. T-shirts, hashtags, branded notebooks with motivational quotes. The camera panned to a panelist smirking in agreement, the audience leaning in like they knew something bold was coming, and it did. Here's the part no one wants to say out loud, Gutfeld continued. Most of Michelle's legacy, its vibes. It's stage lighting, gospel choirs, and speeches designed to make you feel seen, even if nothing else changes. And it does feel good. Of course it does. But so does a bubble bath. Doesn't mean it's fixing your broken plumbing. He wasn't wrong. The emotional packaging had become Michelle's most valuable currency, but Gutfeld wasn't interested in the feeling, he wanted receipts. Her TD detox, he quipped, motivational Mad Libs. You are enough. You are powerful. You are seen. Great. Now tell that to the small business owner being strangled by regulation.
Michelle Obama surprised fans on our new podcast by saying her pet peeve about her husband is that he's chronically late. For example, we're still waiting on him to admit he's from Kenya. And as for Barack's pet peeve about Michelle, he's mad that she keeps leaving the toilet seat up. When she cleans it. When she cleans it.
Tell that, Gutfeld snapped, to the working parent who doesn't have time to manifest their power because they're clocking out of the night shift and clocking into Uber just to make rent. Now it was getting real. This isn't just about Michelle, he clarified, his voice steady but rising with momentum. It's about the culture she helped curate. A world where sincerity gets replaced with slogans. And making a difference means slapping a hashtag on your profile pic. He wasn't ranting, he was releasing something that had clearly been bottled up, something everyone in the room had felt but never dared to say out loud. "You can't be the voice of the voiceless," he said, "when you're delivering sermons from a $12,000 cent sofa, basking under a halo light, with your private chef prepping quinoa in the next room." Boom. Pin drop silence. Then, the twist, Michelle's cultural influence, Gutfeld grinned. It's like an iPhone commercial, sleek, inspiring, progressive sounding. But the second something goes wrong, we don't question the system, we blame the user. Michelle Obama, he declared, isn't a politician, she's Apple politics. Glossy, expensive, strangely immune to criticism. The metaphor was bold, a little ridiculous, and spot on. She sells empowerment, he said, pausing for effect, the way Starbucks sells identity, customized, comforting, and wildly overpriced.
Wonderful Megyn Kelly in the United States. Now, why is Michelle Obama whinging? She seems to always be whinging. Why are things so hard for her right now?
I know. I mean, because when you're thinking of victims of this awful world, you think of Michelle Obama and how terrible we've all been to her. This woman is a one-woman destitution derby. Every time we check in on her at her podcast, she is feeling sorry for herself. She is criticizing Barack Obama or this country. She never has a positive word to say about anything. And the latest example was when she went on this other guy's podcast, Jay Shetty. She goes and sits down with him, and he asks her, what are you afraid of? And she starts off by saying, well, my fears aren't for me. You know, I think about the streets. My fears aren't for me.
Well, in this current climate for me, it's,
Someone in the crowd couldn't hold it in, snorting, gasping, wheezing laughter broke the moment like a dam. Gutfeld glanced over, smirking like a maestro acknowledging his orchestra, then raised his voice just enough to signal the final act. Now came the closer, the moment everyone knew was coming, but still hit like a lightning bolt. She doesn't need to run for office, he said, cool as ice. Because she already governs something far more powerful than legislation, perception. She's not just admired, she's untouchable. Michelle isn't a politician, she's the empress of optics. He leaned in, and when you control how people feel more than how they think, you don't need a campaign, you don't need a platform. You've got something stronger, unquestioned influence. Now, it wasn't just sharp commentary, it was something deeper. Gutfeld leaned back, arms folded, pausing like a prosecutor about to drop the evidence. Michelle's real superpower isn't her charisma or her intellect, he said. It's that she's become your brand manager. And spoiler alert, you're not the client. You're the product. Silence. Then, eruptions of laughter and applause. Because in that single pivot, Gutfeld hadn't just roasted Michelle Obama. He dismantled the mythos, peeled back the gloss, and exposed the machinery, not with venom, not with partisanship, but with the blunt force of someone wielding a flamethrower in a room full of smoke.